Hello friends, welcome to a new episode of Drishti IAS Editorial Analysis. In this editorial analysis, we do three things. We link the editorial to the UPSC syllabus, we understand the key points of the editorial, and we also look at the key concepts that have appeared in the editorial and which are important from exam point of view. So let us begin today's editorial. Today's editorial has been taken from the Hindu and the title is Across the Gulf. It says India must do all it can to help the migrant workers stranded in West Asia. So it directly links with GS paper 2 where we have international relations, and under this we have bilateral, regional and global groupings. We will talk about the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. We'll also look at the Indian diaspora in the Middle East, especially in GCC countries. Now let us look at its key points. The editorial says that India must do all it can to help the migrant workers stranded in West Asia. Now when we talk of West Asia or Middle East, it is one and the same geography. When we look at it from India's perspective, then the countries are in the West Asia, are towards the west of India. And when we look at it from a Western perspective, from US or Europe, then it becomes part of the Middle East. Now the editorial says that around 8 million people in the Gulf Cooperation Council constitute a unique cohort among Indian diaspora communities around the world. Why this Indian diaspora in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries is unique? Because first of all, they are 8 million in number. So it's a big number. And the other important fact is that these people are not allowed by the Gulf Cooperation Council countries to reside permanently in these countries. So they are only there till the time they are working. And these countries are also very concerned that these migrants form a sizable proportion of their population. And they fear that if these migrants are allowed to settle freely, then they will become a minority in their own countries. So that is the reason that the Indian diaspora community in Gulf Cooperation Council countries, they maintain a very solid link with their families back home as compared to maybe the Indian diaspora in US or Europe who have, after years of residing in these countries, have also acquired citizenship of those countries. The other unique part is that the people who are part of this Indian diaspora community in Gulf Cooperation Council countries, around 50% of them are unskilled, 30% are semi-skilled and 20% of them are skilled and in better employment. So a major chunk of the people are unskilled or semi-skilled. So they are in low paying jobs. And as compared to the Indian diaspora in Europe or America, where they are high skilled immigrants. This is also a difference among the Indian migrant workers who are working in Gulf Cooperation Council. Now these migrant workers, they together form the backbone of India's ties with the region. In fact, they serve as goodwill ambassador of India to these countries. And the Indian workers have a very good reputation of being sincere workers and who create no trouble. Now the contribution of nearly 40% of the total foreign exchange remittances to India is also critical for the Indian economy. So these Indian workers who are working in Gulf Cooperation Council countries, they are also bringing almost 40% of the total remittances which India is getting from its people abroad. And we will learn more about remittances in the key concepts section. So at the same time, their labor is also vital for the Gulf Cooperation countries' economy. So all these countries in which they are working, they are not only bringing remittance back to India, but also helping in the development and growth of these Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And as we discussed earlier, there is no option of assimilation into their host countries or very limited option. So their link to India remains intact, unlike the Indian immigrants to West who have acquired the citizenship of those countries and who are comfortably settled. Now, with this COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a challenge for these workers. And there is also a challenge for the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. We'll also look at this in the key concept. But for now, we should know that these are 6 countries grouping. And they are basically dependent on oil revenues because all of these are major producers of oil. Now they are facing the twin challenge of COVID-19 and depressed oil prices. So their economy is also facing the brunt of it. When these countries are facing difficult time, the worst affected are the migrant workers and the majority of them are from India. So it is a problem for India. So the vast majority of Indian migrant workers who are on subsistence wages, that means they are earning very bare minimum. And the reason is because almost 80% of them are unskilled or semi-skilled and they are facing a tough situation in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic because their living and working conditions make it extremely difficult for them to practice social distancing, which is a key requirement for saving oneself from COVID-19. and also to get treatment if infected, because the treatment or the medical cost in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries is very high. And they also have comorbidities. That means these migrant workers also suffer from pre-existing medical conditions, which makes their situation still more precarious. Because the medical costs are very high in these countries, these migrant workers are used to procuring medicines from India whenever they visit India, because in India medicines are cheaper and they can keep a supply of medicine with them. Now, vast sectors of the economy in Gulf Cooperation Council countries have been shut, leaving many of them jobless, because these workers, most of them, were in low paying jobs. So as soon as these companies have got shut, they have become jobless. And also there is a significant number of people who are also there without proper documentation. They have been lured by the brokers for a dream job in Dubai or such places, but they have been cheated. They have not got the kind of jobs they were promised and not the kind of money that they were promised. So such number of people are also there. At the same time, there are thousands of Indian travelers who are stuck in the region, as Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha are important transit points for international travel. Many Indian travelers have got stuck there because of the lockdown announced by Government of India and also by various other countries. Now, editorial says that India must work closely with the governments of the region to bring relief to all Indian citizens. So Indian government has to use its good offices to discuss with the governments of these countries and provide relief to the Indian citizens, be they migrant workers or people who are stranded in these places. Now, Prime Minister Modi has nurtured good relations with all rulers of the region, but the ongoing crisis is testing the endurance of India's ties with some of the GCC countries. And we have seen with the coming of Prime Minister Modi, there have been a lot of high-level exchanges between India and these West Asian countries. And India has had very good relations with almost all the countries. But now it seems that the relationship is going to get tested, because, as the editorial says, that the UAE government has said that it might revise current partnerships concerning labor relations with nations refusing to cooperate with measures to repatriate private sector expatriates who wish to return home. This means that the UAE government has said that those people who are belonging to other countries and working in the private sector in UAE, if they want to go back to their home country because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and if their home countries are refusing to accept them, then UAE will rethink about its labor relationships with these countries, and maybe in the future will not allow labor to come from these countries. So this creates pressure on India to think about how to bring Indian migrant workers back home. Now, UAE has said that it will only send those people who are tested negative for the virus. But again, still creates a lot of pressure for India to devise a mechanism and talk with the government of these countries to bring back people if they want to come back to India. The editorial also talks about Kerala, which is home to more than 2 million Indian immigrants in the Gulf. Kerala has said that it is prepared to receive the returnees and provide them care. Kerala's economy is largely dependent on the remittances sent by the Keralites who are working in the Gulf countries and elsewhere. So Kerala realizes the importance of these people, and it is ready to share the burden of bringing these people back when they are in a problem. So Kerala has shown a very good example for also the other states, which also send huge number of people to the Gulf and other countries. Now there are states like UP, Punjab, Bihar, which send good number of people to Gulf, and these states must also work with the central government now to devise a plan to bring these people back. And also the central government must work out arrangements with the national governments in the region to bring those people who want to come back to India, back home, and maybe rehabilitate them with other employment opportunities. Finally, the editorial says that it will certainly take some effort to arrive at what is doable and desirable. So there can be a difference between what is desirable and what is doable, which will be lesser than that. But we have to find a pragmatic solution to this. Editorial lastly says that this is the least India can do for these migrant workers whose search for livelihood has done the country so much good. They have been sending remittances to the Indian economy, and they have been part of the growth story of India. And now when they are in trouble, Indian state cannot leave them at God's mercy. Indian state must do something for them. So that is the import of the editorial. So these were the key points of the editorial. Now let us look at the key concepts. In the key concepts, today we'll learn about Gulf Cooperation Council and remittances. So let us look at the Gulf Cooperation Council map. So Gulf Cooperation Council is made up of 6 countries. Saudi Arabia is the largest country, and the headquarters of Gulf Cooperation Council is in its capital, that is Riyadh. Then Saudi Arabia is 1, Kuwait is 2, Bahrain is 3, Qatar is 4, UAE is 5, and Oman is 6. So these are the 6 countries of Gulf Cooperation Council. We should know that here Yemen is there, here we have Iran, this is Iraq, this is Jordan. So whenever we come across any grouping or any country which we cannot place, then we must look it up in the atlas. This will be very handy for exam purpose. So the Gulf Cooperation Council is a political and economic alliance of 6 countries in the Arabian Peninsula. We know the 6 countries. Now it was established in 1981 and it promotes economic, security, cultural and social cooperation between the 6 states and holds a summit every year to discuss cooperation and regional affairs. So basically the aim of Gulf Cooperation Council when it was established in 1981 was to save itself from the Iran-Iraq war, which was at its peak during that time. Now the GCC countries possess almost half of the world's oil reserves, but now they are trying to diversify because as the oil prices are going down, these countries are realizing that they have to diversify and they have to keep their economy running. Now GCC's headquarters is in Riyadh, which is capital of Saudi Arabia. So this was all about Gulf Cooperation Council. Now let us look at remittances. Remittances. India has retained its position as the world's top recipient of remittances, with its diaspora sending a whopping $79 billion back home in 2018. So $79 billion were remitted back to India in 2018 by the diaspora, and it made India number 1 in the receiver of remittances. China was number 2. Now global remittances in 2018 was $689 billion. And remittances are usually understood as financial or in-kind transfers made by migrants to friends and relatives back in communities of origin. And they basically have 2 main components. One is the personal transfers in cash or kind between resident and non-resident households, and the compensation of employees, which refers to the income of workers who work in another country for a limited period of time. So these are the 2 main components of remittances. And remittances help in stimulating economic development in recipient countries. But this can also make such countries over-reliant on them. And this is a problem. So remittances help in stimulating the economy, but too much dependence is not good. And this we have seen in the case of Kerala, because Kerala is heavily dependent on the remittances sent by its people who are working overseas. And due to a pandemic like COVID-19, what is happening? These workers want to return back. So whatever remittances that Kerala was getting will not be there, or there will be some shortfall. So that can be problematic for the economy if it is too much dependent on it. So this was all in today's editorial. So basically, from exam point of view, what is important is Gulf Cooperation Council, the issue with the migrant workers who are working in these places, and because they are not skilled or semi-skilled, majority of them, so what challenges it poses for India, and in the situation of a pandemic, how Indian government can help, plus the relationship between India and the Gulf Cooperation Council or countries like UAE or Saudi Arabia. So these are the important things which can be asked in mains also, and there are some facts which can be asked in prelims. So this is all that was in today's editorial. See you next time with another editorial. Thank you.